right, welcome to our second Science Sip. I'm Dr. Lex.
And I'm Dr. Dimos.
And we're the hosts of the Lux Side podcast. And every week we have a cocktail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And talk about some science. So what are we drinking this week?
Cheers. We're drinking to the pioneer of light-emitting diodes who passed away. So I'm going to give a little bit of a background of a great scientist.
Okay. Well, first you got to drink, because you just cheers.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Bad luck to cheers without drinking. And we are having
bad luck, I have no luck at all.
Otto's Vermouth Negronis, because we bought that bottle, so we're going to use it.
It's spectacular.
And it still feels like summer here in Greece, so summer drink was appropriate. It's quite nice, yeah?
Even though now we're in October. So happy October.
Happy October. Kalomina.
Kalomina.
All right, Dimos, do you want to start us off? You mentioned
Sure.
We are in memoriam for somebody this week.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of science history, and when I saw the article in the New York Times about Nick Holoniak, I was amazed about his history, because he's one of these people who should have received the Nobel Prize not once but twice.
Really?
Because of his contributions to the science of lighting, specifically light-emitting diodes. Chances are you have an organic LED or backlit LED display on probably 7 or 8 different devices haunting your home, as we do here.
As well as probably LED light bulbs, right?
It's probably one of the most ubiquitous inventions that surrounds our life that we never really think about.
So what's the main difference between an LED bulb and a conventional light bulb?
Well, conventional light bulbs from the time of Thomas Edison were really just a heated wire in a vacuum-enclosed piece of glass.
Okay.
And the whole key to the design was that if you pulled enough vacuum and you used the right type of wire, you could get a high-quality bulb, high-quality light source that lasted relatively long and was cheap to make.
Okay. So, but then what's an LED?
LED is 2 slightly different pieces of inexpensive silicon that come together, and you connect a battery across them, and the tiny little bit of current that flows through a semiconductor junction, like we see in just about every piece of electronics we own, creates the light, the photons that reach our eyeballs, in all different colors, from the original red that was invented in 1962.
Oh, so red was the first LED?
It was the first LED.
That's pretty cool.
And the scientists at the time, this was developed at the General Electric laboratories in the advanced semiconductor processing facilities in the late 50s, early 60s was when the concept was begun. And in 1962 was the first ever working prototype of a red LED, which scientists at GE said, there's no way this can work. All the chemists were like, there's no way, and yet...
Did they mean to do red first, or did it just happen by accident?
It happened by accident. Red, I think, was probably one of the easier LED technologies to develop, and it took a long time. It took just a short time to get green and yellow, but it took a very long time, in fact, almost 30 years before blue showed up. And the inventors of the blue LED received a Nobel Prize, because the blue LED was able to tie red and green together. Now you could actually have a semiconductor light source that could be any color you ever wanted it to be.
Hence the array of rainbow Christmas light options that you can do. Interesting.
Rainbow Christmas lights were in existence before the blue LED.
Yeah, but not the
But they weren't really great.
Most of them were okay. I like the big fat bulbs.
Oh yeah.
Those are really nice.
But the original Christmas light bulbs were still filaments. They're just tiny.
Yeah.
And what was very interesting is if you look on eBay, you can find Christmas light kits from the late 1800s, 1890. So soon after the light bulb was invented, people wanted to make Christmas lights out of.
Well, I mean, think about it, because the alternative is you put a bunch of candles on your Christmas tree, and that just seems a bit risky.
Quick and easy way to protect your house from unintentional flame outs.
Although I don't know if the early Christmas lights, if those strings of wires were any better.
They were better than what was the alternative. But also, yes, you're right. Lights of the time were a little sketchy, to say the least.
Yeah, you need a couple of rounds of iteration on that.
Yeah, but what's exciting and amazing, this particular scientist studied under James Bardeen the inventor of the transistor, one of the inventors of the transistor as we know today, and who did receive a Nobel Prize.
So do you think this guy that we're talking about, do you think he felt jaded that he didn't get a Nobel Prize too?
You know, it's funny. He never took a sabbatical. He never left his lab. He taught at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and loved according to his biographer, loved every minute of his work, and never really found a need to leave the lab, and worked alongside his grad students until his retirement in 2013. He passed away at 93 years old.
Nice long life.
Yeah, but he essentially worked until his early 80s, so quite a significant
This is why grad
contribution.
students can't get tenured professorships anymore.
Yeah, well, there's probably a lot of reasons, but
It's one of the reasons people don't retire.
yeah, I don't think all faculty show as much love of the art of their science as this particular very, very intelligent man, and really and of Ukrainian descent, interestingly, on both sides of his family. And surprisingly, his origin story was his dad was a coal miner, his mom was a teacher. He worked for one day doing flood restoration in upstate New York on on some coal trains that had been flooded out due to a bad rainstorm. And after a day of pickaxe and hammers and dealing with railroad tracks, he told his dad, "I got to find another job. I do not want to do this for the rest of my life." And
it's tough work.
And go figure, he went from that to inventing the light emitting diode.
It's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
Well, here's to him.
Here's to Holoniak.
Holoniak.
May he rest in peace.
Hey, he drank that time.
Oh.
So I, as usual, have a little bit of a different spin on what caught my eye this week.
Mm-hmm.
Went to my usual source, Eureka Alert,
Mm-hmm.
done by the AAAS, and I found something that's very on brand with our podcast.
Oh.
So, BGI, Beijing Genomics Institute, collaboration with Southwest University and some other partners, did the first pan-genome of the silkworm.
So exciting.
Do you know what a pan-genome is?
Well, I would imagine it's like a map of the entire genetic code of the silkworm.
Sort of. So it's a collection of whole genome sequences of a good portion of the species.
Oh, wow. So
you're really looking at the genomes, the genetic diversity of an entire species.
sounds like a big project.
It is. They did sequencing in 1,078 different silkworms, of which only a few were wild silkworms, because wild silkworms are very difficult to find.
Oh, wow. But they were able to find some.
They found some. Do you know where silk comes from?
Where silk comes from?
Mm-hmm. How silkworms make silk?
I guess they eat a certain type of tree. And then
So the silk comes from the larval stage of several different species of moths.
Okay.
So the larvae do like to eat particular types of food, the mayberry being one of them. And the cocoons are actually the silk. So they spin the silk into the cocoon.
Oh.
Yes. Well, and then if in there they grow into the moth. What's a bit sad is that in the industrial silk production, you actually don't let the moth come out. You kill the moth stage, because when the moth punctures the cocoon, it actually degrades the fiber of the silk.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So that's a little sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, they did this. Why do you think they did the sequencing?
Maybe due to planetary climate change, there's a concern that we're not going to have natural silk in the future.
No. So they did it for commercial concerns, right?
Okay.
So the first silkworms were thought to be domesticated over 5,000 years ago. And so obviously these silkworms have gone through a lot of different breeding.
Mm-hmm.
And they have come up against what they call them breeding bottlenecks,
Oh, wow.
where they don't know enough about the genetics to be able to change the traits by breeding alone.
Oh, wow.
So they did this pan-genome, and they found a couple of interesting things. So first is they found evidence that the first silkworms were domesticated in China's lower and River region,
Okay.
which I thought was kind of cool.
It's
They
neat
could-
that you can tell from.
and yeah, they
genetic
found
sequencing.
archaeological evidence too. Basically petrified silk cocoons from that era.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that neat?
It's interesting that a genetic sequence will tell you where to go and dig for your
Well, no, so they
archaeology.
found the archaeology first, and then the genetics just confirmed, because what they saw is that the sequences from that area were the base of a larger phylogenetic tree, which suggests that that's where the domestication happened.
Okay.
They also found that Japanese and Chinese silkworms are being bred relatively independently, the breeding history. So they're not kind of co-bred, which gives you some opportunities to mingle those two types and get different types of silkworms.
Okay.
And then they did find a bunch of genetic targets, as you would think, because they did genome sequencing. And one of the ones that I thought was interesting is the beta glucanase that they think is involved in the fineness of the silk.
Okay.
So not all silkworms make really fine silk. And obviously the finer the silk, the more valuable it is. And so they found this gene that when they knocked it out using the CRISPR-Cas technology, then the silk got coarser.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so now they have what they call an improvement target, which means you can breed and select for that particular gene when you're breeding, and then improve not just the amount, but also the quality of the silk that the silkworms are making.
Otherwise, you're just making denim.
No, that's not how you make denim.
Okay, just kidding.
Probably be better if it was made that way. Denim is actually one of the worst types of material for the environment, apparently.
Well,
Yeah.
that's good, because I have a lot of old denim button-down shirts. I used to be 100% denim kind of guy way back in the day. I think I was trying to look like Walker, Texas Ranger, except without the hat.
Or the hair.
Or the martial arts skills.
Or the height.
Or the strength.
Yeah, whatever. But it was close, it was close. You were really close.
Chuck Norris, baby.
Anyway, so I thought that was super fascinating that you're taking what is really a very ancient and old process of breeding silkworms and putting this new spin on it and using the technology to guide how they're doing it.
Well, silk is important. I've got a few silk ties. Don't wear them anymore.
Nobody wears ties anymore.
Yeah, I
Who
know.
wears ties?
What's up with the tie? It's just, it vanished.
I don't blame people. It's like women in pantyhose. It must be so uncomfortable to wear a tie.
Yeah, I don't see that much either.
All right. So apparently Dimos has no questions about my silkworms. But we've had a long weekend. A fun one, but a long one. So we will say Kalinita and cheers. And we're going to finish our cocktails. We hope you enjoyed this little bit of science. All right.